This week on A Lively Experiment, children needing early intervention services forced to wait months for the state of Rhode Island to respond. And the state is way behind its goal of having 25% of the fleet all electric or plug-in hybrid vehicles. What it's doing to try and catch up.
A Lively Experiment is generously underwritten by...
Hi, I'm John Hazenwhite Jr. For over 30 years, A Lively Experiment has provided insight and analysis of the political issues that face Rhode Islanders. I'm a proud supporter of this great program and Rhode Island PBS.
Joining us on the panel, Boston Globe columnist Dan McGowan, attorney and former chairman of the Rhode Island Democratic Party, Bill Lynch, plus Boston Globe reporter and Rhode Island PBS Weekly contributor, Steph Machado. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Lively. I'm Jim Hummel. We appreciate you spending part of your weekend with us. We usually don't do theme shows on Lively, but this week's topics have a common thread: government falling down on the job and leaving the people it is supposed to help underserved and frustrated. We start with a story by Steph Machado that she did for Rhode Island PBS Weekly on the state's failure to provide timely early intervention services for hundreds of children. Steph will tell us more about it in a moment. But first, John Kelly, president of Meeting Street School, talks about the importance of getting to children early.
At the end of the day, the issue comes down to there's not enough providers. And I don't mean agencies. I mean people working for us. Like we're short-staffed. Everybody's short-staffed, and unfortunately, people don't want to hear it, but that comes down to money. And early childhood, and particularly early intervention, is not valued the way it should be valued. If you look at the biggest investment you're putting into kids and to the economy and to economic development, there was a research study a long time ago that said $1 put in was a $12 savings down the road. And your tax revenues went up because people were making more money. Your prison costs went down because people weren't going to, and not as many people were going to prison. Your child welfare costs were going down. Your special ed costs in your public schools were going down.
You're tying a child getting early intervention when they are an infant or toddler to fewer people going to prison.
Yep. When you look at it, over 40% of the kids who come through early intervention don't need any supplemental services, meaning they don't qualify for them after the age of 3. That's an incredible savings to the public school district. And it's also getting kids ready to enter school where they should be. Without that intervention, what would that look like?
And if you want to watch the entire piece that Steph produced, you can go to our website, ripbs.org/weekly. So, Steph, I'm always curious from the reporter's perspective. Was this pretty well known and it bubbled up to you? How did you hear about this issue?
Well, it was actually a big problem during the pandemic and got a lot of news coverage in 2021. There was no wait list for early intervention prior to 2021. All the children, I'm told, were getting in within this, the time frame required by law, and there was a big crisis. It did get a lot of news coverage at the time, and state lawmakers did pass some increased Medicaid rates in 2022. And then we hadn't really heard about it since, and I wanted to know whether the problem was solved. And I was hearing from parents who were not getting into early intervention. In fact, some of them were trying to get into special ed preschool, and their child had never even had early intervention, which ends at age 3, because they never got off the wait list. So that prompted me to bring up the issue again and look into whether the problem was solved. And unfortunately, there's still an incredibly long wait list, nearly 900 children as of earlier this month waiting for these services.
And as a young parent, the clock ticks, and then all of a sudden the kid's 3 years old and he ages out.
He's a young child. Doesn't mean he's a young parent.
Duly noted. We will make that. You feel older every day.
I will say every day I look at my son and I say, why can't you read yet? And so I am worried about it to some degree.
You got him on the fast track there in the McGowan household.
And they always say, you just hit it on the head, though. These things do fly very fast, and you need those services before you were 3 years old, right? We always talk about when you get into grade school, you got to be able to read by the 3rd grade. You got to be able to do math by the 5th grade. I mean, as the guy from Meeting Street says, and as everybody points out, if you aren't catching kids, these most vulnerable kids, at the very earliest age, guess what? We're going to have the same problems that we have with all of our kids in particularly our urban school systems all the way through the 12th grade.
Yeah, I mean, it's the old story of sunshine's the best disinfectant. So kudos to Steph for doing the story, because it gets it out there more generally to the public, as opposed to parents who have the issue, within their household. And I think that's important, because it's all a matter of priorities. And one of the things that we saw in your entire piece was that as a consequence of some of this involvement with these people, that the state, through Speaker Sakachi and with the Senate help, made additional funds available, increased some of the Medicaid reimbursements. So it's a step in the right direction. Even the Meeting Street said that. It's not, they'd like to have more, obviously, but at least it lets people know that this is an issue that has to be dealt with. We've made some progress. There's more room to go. It wasn't too many years ago that there was a debate, and the Democratic Party, generally speaking, was pushing for all-day kindergarten. That got resistance. So sometimes it's a process, to get that progress, which is unfortunate when you're dealing with kids who grow up fast, as Deanne will find out.
Yeah, one of the advocates that I interviewed said, it's like starting a basketball game when you're already 20 points behind. If you go to kindergarten and you haven't gotten any help for whatever developmental delay or disability you may have, it gets harder and harder to catch up to your peers later on in your schooling.
So you'll see in the full piece, if you watch it on our website, is that you talk to a young mother and her son, and then there's issues for her because she's trying to juggle work and getting it. So what's the, and that tugs on your heartstring, and it's always good. It's what we call on TV putting a face on the story. So what is it? Is it lack of staff? Is it more people asking for services? You said right before the pandemic, they were all caught up. Now there's 858 people on a waiting list.
Yeah, it's staffing issues. Everyone from the providers to the advocates to state officials say, we do not have enough staff. And they say they really probably didn't have enough staff before the pandemic, but they were managing. They probably needed more then. But then there was this huge drop in staffing levels and early intervention. And we have a chart, actually, if you go to the story on globe.com/Rhode Island, the huge drop in the staffing levels. And it has been going up slowly, but it's still not up to where it was pre-pandemic. And there's a lot of different factors for that. Obviously, pay. We're talking about speech therapists, physical therapists. There's a huge demand for those types of clinicians in hospitals, in public schools. It's not just early intervention. And so they are being offered more money to work elsewhere than they would be paid in early intervention. So the providers like Meeting Street are saying we really need to be able to pay them more and pay them more to retain them. Give them raises every year, not just a little tiny raise, but retention bonuses, things to actually keep these people here, because we're competing with every other setting that needs a speech therapist, that needs a physical therapist, an occupational therapist.
Yeah, I mean, this is the reality of kind of where we are in the world right now. Nobody likes to hear, you need to spend more money, but very clearly, if we want to have these early interventionists, we need to pay them more money. It's the only solution, because they do have other options. It's a good market for them right now, because they have lots of places that they can go and jump from, I think you reported this, Steph, from fairly significant. You can get $25,000, $30,000, $40,000 more dollars if you go work at a hospital or things like that. Of course you're going to do that. We make, in our careers, would make moves all the time to make that much more money. So it makes complete sense. You gotta find ways to pay them more.
I think the salient point, too, to Dan's point, is that I think it's helpful, and you pointed out in your piece, that this is not just a temporary expenditure of additional funds. I mean, there is empirical data that shows over time money spent on early intervention, preschool services, all-day kindergarten. It pays off in the long run, because it reduces all of these costs that you're going to otherwise deal with down the road. Whether, unfortunately, whether it's juvenile issues, population at the ACI, different things that were mentioned in your piece. So there's a benefit to investing the money now, and I think that's why the speaker and others are so ingrained in trying to get that done.
I interviewed John Kelly for a Rhode Island Spotlight piece that I did. I profiled Meeting Street last fall, and I heard some of those same, he beats that drum, and I think it's a good one to say what we invest now for the long run is going to save us money. But when you're trying to balance the budget at a place like Meeting Street or other places, those dividends don't pay off until 5 or 10 years down the line. If he's raising all those salaries, then that's that's not going away. His budget's going to be that much more. And isn't that the challenge? If you're paying more people, you've got to raise more money to balance your budget.
Right, exactly. And his argument is that this program should be fully funded. They shouldn't be, because, Meeting Street has a big telethon every year. They raise like $1 million. He thinks that they shouldn't have to be backfilling the money that the state and federal government aren't reimbursing for this program because it's a mandate. It's a federal mandate. Everyone agrees that it's so important. Why isn't it being fully funded? And I will say the state, under Governor McKee and under Governor Raimondo, gave COVID relief funds to these early intervention providers, which they say was helpful. But that's a one-time thing. The final payment's being made later this year. So they say they really need a sustained, maybe cost of living increase continuing so they can be able to continue to pay people more each year.
The other story, one of the other stories we saw, Kathy Gregg reported on a legislative oversight committee that said the Department of Human Services is running a $16.9 million surplus, but that wait times are almost an hour for people to get key social services. So it goes back to the employment. We can't match the jobs with the vacancies. And it's a rare thing in government to have that kind of surplus. But you would think it's so maddening for the people reading this story, Dan, that why can't we get these positions filled if you have the money to do it?
Yeah, and you're seeing some, I think, is it Representative Serpa who wants to potentially end the civil service exam to try to potentially have more people in the pipeline. But I think it does go back. This is it's somewhat similar in some ways. Is these holes? People are finding better jobs elsewhere, right? They're able to get paid more money doing, work, whether it's in the private sector or elsewhere. And so you have to make these jobs. Nobody likes to hear that government needs to spend more money, but in some cases that is true here. You have this big surplus is simply because you have a lot of vacancies, right? It's not like everybody's just putting money under their couch, right? It's because they can't pay people to, they can't find enough people to work. That's the real challenge here. This kind of workforce issue that is kind of post-COVID in so many different sectors. It's just very real. I mean, it goes to people. You're making the decision between going to work and being in, paying for childcare, things like that. There are all these decisions that are getting made, and when there's just not a lot of money, it's not that attractive of a job.
What about that civil service, wiping that out? Is that a slippery slope to go down an exam?
Look, the problem is that it was put there to protect and preserve a certain status that you wanted people to be at in terms of qualifications.
Minimum.
I think, right, and I think that it can be adjusted. Like anything else, it's been in place for a long time. And if you ask somebody why do you have that, the typical answer is, well, because we've always had it, right? Which is never really a very good answer. So I think that they're looking at that right now. I know Pat Serpa is looking closely at that. But the other issue is Dan is right, and we saw a little bit of it in Steph's piece, is that the competition, it has changed. I'm not sure it's 100% COVID, but things have changed dramatically. I do a lot of work at the family court, as you know. And let me tell you, it's not just early intervention. You've got young children, adolescents, 7, 8-year-old kids that are in desperate need of therapists. And good luck. You can wait 6 months to try to get a child in to see a therapist who's got critical needs, by the way, not just for a hey, how you doing kind of meeting. Childcare, you got people that are saying, I'm leaving my job because by the time I pay childcare, if I can find childcare, by the way, I'm not making any money. What's the sense? I might as well stay home. So there's a lot of issues, I think, that sort of, residual damage done and overlap with the early intervention and other things that it's not an easy thing to solve.
And, guess who's the most likely to leave the workforce because of the cost of childcare? Women. Right. And guess who is the predominant gender in early childhood education is women. So it's hard to find people if they're not in the workforce.
And the other thing is, especially with the therapists, I know during COVID they relaxed. You couldn't go over state lines. So if you were a therapist in Providence and you had somebody in Seekonk, they relaxed that during the pandemic, but then they tightened it up. And I hear that they may be reconsidering that again to come in line with let's make it easier to try to hook up the therapist. And I understand you want to be in person, but if that's all you can get, let's adapt a little bit, right?
I think they're finding that there were things, very few, but there were some positive things that came out of the pandemic, and one of them is this online or remote access, telehealth to doctors, psychiatrists, counselors, and people said, well, that'll end as soon as COVID gets rolled back, and it really hasn't. It's been reduced, and there's a constant battle between health insurers, companies, and people at the providers in terms of how that should be funded. But there's no question that it's helped people with access to services that they would not otherwise have. And a lot of it, by the way, is done on a national level because, we get used to in Rhode Island, you can drive just about anywhere. But this is an issue that affects people across the country. And you've got urban areas where, people don't have access to a doctor, a counselor, a therapist, unless it's remotely by telehealth. So there have been some positives, very few obviously, but it's gotten better and it's here to stay. There's nobody that I hear of now saying, let's go back to the way we were pre-COVID and get rid of telehealth. I just don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, I was just moderated a panel on mental health access just a week or two ago, and in the care in Rhode Island, and you talk to, some of the specialists that focus on this stuff, and they talk about, yes, the telehealth is a huge, a major issue. And the other part is finding ways to make sure if you do need to get, a particularly young people to an appointment, if you do need to do that, what we don't do a very good job of is, sure, in Providence you can find a provider. It's much harder in the suburb, or in Foster, and if you have to get
and then you have to take time out of work and all of that.
Exactly, and this is why I think, unfortunately, you are, as Steph pointed out, you're seeing a lot of mothers fall out of the workforce because they're more. It's cheaper to kind of stay home with your kid than it is to get them the support that they need or get them into childcare.
The other story about government, the trifecta of not living up to maybe where it should be, is I did a story for the Hummel Report. It ran in Sunday's Providence Journal about the state fleet trying to move towards zero emissions. That's electric, plug-in cars. Governor Raimondo signed an executive order back in 2015 that said we should be at 25% by 2025. They're only at 9.4%, so they got a ways to go. Governor McKee has kind of moved that back a little bit to 2030. Billy, I think the larger issue here, though, is, a lot of people say, I kind of want to go to electric cars. Cost, supply, and probably infrastructure, right? Where are you going to charge these?
Right. I think that's all part of it, and people are still not sold on it until they see it's a chicken and the egg issue, I guess. Until they see the cost come down, the availability of charging, home charges, and all that be addressed, people are hesitant, I think, to jump in feet first. So I think we're moving in that direction. It may be slower than some people want, including some people in my party that would like to see us move a lot more aggressively. But I think the process is getting there. But I think people, generally speaking, are not completely on board with it yet for those reasons, I think.
Yeah, and I think it also speaks to setting some of these ambitious goals which completely make sense. It's not like Rhode Island is unique when it comes to the carbon goals and things like that. But there's goals to set, and then there's what's realistic. And I think Rhode Island's running into this challenge right now.
And in the Raimondo administration, they said it. She knew she wasn't going to be around in 10 years, as Governor McKee will not likely be active after 2030, even if he gets reelected again. But they didn't do anything the first 3 years. So like the early intervention, that puts you in a hole because you can't make up that ground.
Well, so, I loved your story, Jim. And what I thought about it was we constantly cover these big announcements. There's a hoopla. We're gonna do this great thing by the year 2030, whatever the year is, after the person who makes the promise is not going to be in office anymore.
Governor who?
And so I'm glad that you went back and you checked in on how that goal was going, and then you found that whole situation where the governor's advance man traded in his hybrid vehicle for, what was it?
A Jeep Wagoneer V8, 17 miles to the gallon,
so
3 out of 10 on the, yeah. $76,000.
Might as well have got a Hummer.
Yeah. And it is hard. I mean, I'm an apartment dweller, so I'd love to
Where
have
would
an
you
electric
charge?
Car, but there's no charger. I guess if I could convince my landlord to get a charger, but then I'm just going to move to the next apartment. So it's not a reliable. We don't have a reliable infrastructure yet for a lot of people to feel like they can buy electric cars, but the state can certainly get chargers and set them up and have state employees who drive vehicles.
They've got them in the basement, the DOT, DOA.
Yeah, they have
basement
reliable,
right
the state can have reliable charging.
You know, it's funny, I've told this story. My son, we gave him my wife's 2013 Camry when he started grad school 4 years ago. He needed reliable transportation. He was going to register it in North Carolina to get residency. And he said to me a couple of years ago, he said, you know, Toyotas will last forever, so he could have this car another 10 years. But he said, I wonder if this is the last gasoline-powered vehicle that I'm going to buy. And so who knows where we're going to be 5 or 10 years from now. But he's thinking about that already in a way that, have you thought at all about electric or hybrid?
Yeah, because I'm reminded of it at home. I bought a car not too long ago, and it's not an electric car. And I thought I was going to get, from my grandson and my daughter, I thought I was going to get crucified. They were going to like flatten the tires. So yeah,
you go out in your own driveway and slash.
The Rolls Royce isn't yet electric.
Yeah, no, I'm very aware of it. I think generally speaking, people are aware of it. I just think there's some residual reticence to moving forward with some people because they don't see it quite widely accepted and widely available yet. And I think and by the way, there's a human part of it that, you know, we've always had gas vehicles. There's gas stations everywhere. You can pull in and in 5 minutes you're back on the road. And I don't think, generally speaking, people are sold on that as being the case with electric cars yet.
Do you think, Bill, that the state should be taking a heavier hand in mandating chargers for businesses or commercial buildings, or do you think that's crossing a line?
Yeah, I think that's the balancing test you always see with the state and with businesses, and I think the state typically would say they'd like to see more direction from the federal government because it's a federal issue, and of course there's nothing coming out of the Congress right now with how separate and apart the two parties are down there. So I think there's a bit of a logjam that's been created by that. I think that probably contributes to some of it.
It's also the pressure that gets put. I've always watched this, particularly on issues like this, like environmental issues. The pressure that gets put on places like Rhode Island from the big states, right? You have to follow suit when California decides to take action, or quite frankly, our neighbors to the north in Massachusetts. But California is always a big one. It puts a lot of pressure on us to get it done.
Those Raimondo goals were based on California.
California goals. That's right.
Either way. Let's do this. Let's do outrages and/or kudos, and there's one other thing I want to get to. Bill, what do you have this week?
I hate to do it, but it's got to be Donald Trump, and I try to do anything else except him because it could always be an outrage with Donald Trump. But when he talks about General Milley, who's a lifetime military guy, I couldn't tell you what party General Milley is from if he even has a political preference. But the guy has been wounded in action, served his whole life in the military protecting the country. He makes 2 innocuous phone calls to China, both of which were approved by our national security people. And the president is unhappy with him for God only knows why. And publicly, Donald Trump goes out and says that he committed treason and he should be executed.
That's rich coming from Trump, huh?
It's just unbelievable. But I think it also shows his complete ignorance of the issue that there are people out there who believe and buy into whatever he says. And in this environment, to call for someone to be executed is just, it's unforgivable. I don't understand it. And I'm sure General Milley is a military guy, but he's got a family. Yeah. And it's just, I just don't get it. And I don't know how anybody of either party can find that kind of behavior acceptable.
Dan, what do you have?
My outrage is the debate, which shouldn't be a debate at all, over the future of Mount Pleasant High School in Providence. There's a chance to build a brand new school for the first time in Providence in more than 15, 20 years, going back to David Cicilline when he was mayor. And you're getting some opposition from preservationists who would never send their children to a school like Mount Pleasant. You're getting some opposition from some state lawmakers who quite frankly just want to fight over what the future of public education looks like. But you look at the kids in that school, 0% proficiency in math. 0%. Not one kid, not the valedictorian, is proficient in math at that school. Buildings falling apart. I live in a neighborhood. Literally, there are bricks that fall down. They've fenced off the school to try to get it to try to make it safer. And you have this chance to build a school. It should happen. It should have happened yesterday. And hopefully, and to the credit of Governor McKee, he's kind of pushing for this. And so hopefully it will happen, and you won't see so much obstruction going forward.
Yeah, the kids deserve that. Steph, what do you have?
I think the reticence of state officials to speak to reporters about big issues that they're responsible for, like the early intervention program.
You couldn't get somebody on camera.
Nope, or even off camera. And so I think that continues to be a problem. It's a disservice to the public when you run a program or you're responsible for something, especially young children, and you won't talk about it and you're hiding behind a spokesperson. That's a huge problem.
And some of the spokespeople are making north of six figures. So, if
For
you're a
any of them.
spokesperson or a communications person, communicate. We have just a couple minutes left. Dan, you've been following the payment in lieu of taxes. Providence Mayor Smiley, who I had interviewed for a weekly piece months ago, talked about he's been working on getting the 4 colleges on board, Lifespan not so much. So now this is running into a little resistance at City Hall. This is timely this week, so bring us up to speed. And this is their contribution to the budget. A little bit more than what they've been doing.
Yeah. I mean, this is as Steph has reported, it's more than $200 million over the course of 20 years from these 4 colleges. There's a separate deal with Brown that's we're talking a substantial amount of money. And I think we all kind of thought initially that this was going to be kind of sail through. You had the mayor on board with the city council president. Usually the mayor and the city council president, if they're on the same page.
And they had the money earmarked for where they wanted to spend it, right? As soon as this goes through, the checks flow.
Oh yeah, they actually have a hiring freeze waiting for this money to go through.
That's right. And now you are getting some resistance. That Providence City Council is extremely progressive, and so that you are getting some pushback about what these colleges should pay more. And the challenge is that there's always the chance the colleges just walk away and kind of thumb their nose.
They can tell you to go pound sand.
Because they don't have to do this. It's just public pressure.
Yeah, I was at the public hearing the other night, and a lot of people, including Brown University students, were saying this is unacceptable. They should be paying more. And this new city council, a lot of them would agree with that point, and so there's no guarantee that it has the votes to pass. I think the council president is cautiously optimistic that it's going to pass potentially as soon as next week, but by the time this program airs, we will know if it came out of the council finance committee, which is also not guaranteed to pass the deal. So.
There was the initial one and then a separate thing with Brown. Now, could it be bifurcated, or do you think they're going to consider it all together?
So it could be bifurcated. I think they're going to, they're going to vote on them separately, to be clear, but I think they're still going to do it on the same day because the whole thing could fall apart if they pass one deal but not the separate Brown deal, because it was really all negotiated together, even though Brown has sort of its separate deal where they're going to get some city streets and some different things from the city. What do you think?
The pilot program, which is, payment in lieu of taxes, has been around. This has been a debate that's been going on for decades, and it's gotten a lot more publicity lately because financial times have changed. Mm-hmm. And it's always a sort of a tug of war. You've got council members who think, this is good that you got them to this point, but we want that plus more, and they want to have a say in it, and it's typically something that's negotiated by the administration. I think they'll get to a point where they have something that they can live with. But it's been something that's been going on for a long time. That's been threatened, lawsuits, that are going to be filed, if an agreement isn't reached. But they've been able to reach an agreement for years.
Last 15 seconds.
What's funny is that this has been going on forever. Back 1990, the Democratic nominee for mayor, Andrew Ronaldo, says, tax Brown, tax Brown. Providence Journal editorial board, don't do it. They were on Brown's side at the time. Things have evolved a lot.
Yeah. Okay, folks, that is all the time we have. Bill, good to see you again, and Steph and Dan. Folks, we appreciate your loyalty to this show. We're here every week for you. Please come back next week as a lively experiment continues. We hope you have a great weekend.
A Lively Experiment is generously underwritten by...
Hi, I'm John Hazen White Jr. For over 30 years, A Lively Experiment has provided insight and analysis of the political issues that face Rhode Islanders. I'm a proud supporter of this great program and Rhode Island PBS.